everybody, happy Sunday. I hope that wherever you are and whatever you are doing, you are having a fantastic weekend. If you hear strange noises and you see tails, that is because I have both my border collies out in the front yard with me today as I'm recording this Sunday Musing. Just as with last week, we are having extremely hot temperatures here. I think it hit 47 degrees Celsius yesterday here at the house. And so I'm trying to give my border collies, who are a very energetic breed, some extra time outside before it gets super hot. And obviously I'm filming these videos at the same time. So I'm keeping an eye on them. If I look slightly distracted, one wanders off or whatever, that is what I'm up to. I'm not being purposefully distracted. I just want to be a good dog mum and give the dogs some time to roam while I film. Also, on a related note, if you want to hear a tale of ennui, go to the Chicken and Garden update, which should already be published, because this little lady here had a bad experience, and I will tell you all about it in the Chicken and Garden update. I will also explain what this t-shirt means, so go watch it if you want to know the explanation. Excuse me, I have a ball to throw. In the last couple of weeks of Sunday Musings, we've focused on some different topics concerning kind of individual actions. 2 weeks ago, the topic was what would make you use public transit more often. And last week, it was why bother? Why do we even bother as individuals doing the things that we do when large corporations and wealthy people often don't make the steps that they should to make our world cleaner, greener, safer, smarter, and most importantly, more equitable. Today, I have I suppose a tangentially related question, which is one about you as an individual and your purchase decisions and how you evaluate how quote unquote sustainable something is. And I'm putting sustainable in quotes because traditionally sustainable means it's a product that is being produced without pulling resources from the earth that cannot easily be replenished. And sometimes a product can still be quite green, but not necessarily sillily sustainable. And I say sillily sustainable because I mean everything is checked off on a list. But if you own that product for a long period of time, it becomes more sustainable. I'm talking about things like, I suppose, a battery electric car, right? If you buy that car and you replace it every few years and it ends up having a very short life, then it's not sustainable. And I think we are kidding ourselves if we argue that it is. It might be more environmentally responsible than a petrol or a diesel powered car, but the sustainability comes from the extended lifespan that vehicle has. It's something that I am personally very passionate about, making sure that we have battery packs to put in these vehicles to keep them on the road as long as possible. It's one of the reasons we own an older EV. It's one of the reasons why one of the project vehicles we are hopefully going to get has a longer lifespan and has got an upcycled or reused battery pack. But I'm talking about other products, right? When we go to the store, when we make a purchase decision to buy something, what are the steps that you are personally going through to ensure that that product is sustainable? Thank you. Do you make sure that that product is locally produced? Do you look to see if it is made near to you using resources that can easily be replenished, or maybe it is made from non-renewable resources but recycled resources, so something that uses recycled plastics, something that maybe uses recycled materials that would traditionally be just thrown away. That is obviously more sustainable than a product that uses virgin materials that have been mined, refined, and likely will be thrown away at the end of their life. Obviously, gadgets, computers especially, can be really terrible when it comes to their recyclability. Some companies are getting better, some companies are not. And often recyclability and right to repair goes hand in hand, because the more recyclable something is, generally the easier it is to work on that product, the easier it is to keep it running. I know that there are a couple of laptop companies that are coming into existence right now that are working really hard to make their laptops sustainable and recyclable and user repairable. I would love to know, though, how you personally shop for those things. Do you look at an item's sustainability? You might go to the store and look at something and go, oh, it's organic, therefore it's sustainable, which it might not be. It's very possible to have an organic product that is non-sustainable. At the same point, it's possible to have a sustainable product that is not organic or not ethical. How do you assess which one you go for? Marketing seems to be quite difficult to get to the bottom of. You know, marketing speak is always engineered to get you to buy a particular product, and will use buzzwords in order to encourage you to believe that a particular product or a particular service is better than another. But is it? I personally find it really difficult when I'm shopping for things to always be cognizant of that. And when I told Kate Walton Elliott that I was going to be doing this as the Sunday Musing, she laughed and said, oh, you're going to go all Good Place on us. And yeah, you know, if you haven't watched The Good Place, go watch it without spoiling the end. There is one particular episode in which, you know, the argument is made that we humans today on planet Earth, we are all culpable in some way or another, at least most of us are, for some really terrible things that we are doing to other people, to the planet, to the other living things that we inhabit this pale blue dot with. And, you know, the argument is it's very hard to be ethical. It's very hard to pick that perfect product. But I want to know how you go about trying to figure out what that is. You know, is it reading reviews? Is it digging into a company to find out if that company is actually as good as it says? You know, we often get pictures from companies, as I've very honestly told you before. And a lot of the time, you know, we turn those companies down and go, I'm sorry, we're not interested in this product because it's greenwashed, or no, we don't do advertorials. But then as part of that process of looking at the company, we tend to look at the company anyway, we get a good idea of which companies are actually trying to greenwash something and which companies are serious about their credentials. And a company's attitude to right to repair, a company's attitude towards where they get their stuff from and their supply chain is really important with that. Sorry, I have a ball between my legs again. I thought I'd taken care of that. We have a challenge as well in the automotive industry, right? Because a product is only as sustainable and transparent as whichever point in the chain that becomes obfuscated. Sometimes you can chase those materials right back to the mines where the materials are originally dug up. Things like the aluminium that vehicles like my F-150 Lightning are built of, the battery pack materials that are used, that are then refined and then put in the battery pack, making sure you know where they come from. And as an industry, I think the auto industry has to get better at this. It has to have more of a path, not necessarily the Portlandia joke about where did this chicken come from, what was its name, can I go see where the chicken was, and then they go to the farm where the chicken was originally from, and then they end up joining a commune. That's not what I'm talking about, right? I'm talking about having that supply chain and that knowing exactly where the products come from, and being able to see what that life cycle looks like, and then that gives us a better chance to examine the sustainability, or at least the green credentials of a product. And the same is true for for food and for clothing and for plenty of other things. Now, I've been watching a lot of content lately on YouTube. There's a guy up in Scotland who has border collies, right? He's a shepherd. Ball at the knees. He's a shepherd, and he has, I think, 4 border collies. I think his name is Sean the Sheepman, which is a cool pun, because he's the right age to have grown up with Sean the Sheep on TV. He was doing a video recently about shearing, right? And he was talking about how these days wool is not as highly prized as it once was, because a lot of people want to go for synthetic materials, because synthetic materials in some ways are more versatile. You can do more with them. They tend to have a slightly longer lifespan. You don't have to worry about allergies and things in the same way that you might do with wool. And he was saying, you know, the wool product that you get from sheep, it's harder to sell that now than it used to be. And that's kind of made me go, wait, I love wool clothes, right? I like using wool. I like the feel of wool. Wool keeps you warm in the winter. And that was it kind of stuck in my head. I was like, that's interesting. Wool has gone from being a commodity that, you know, in history made some individuals very, very wealthy. I mean, if you go to my home county of Norfolk in the UK, and then you kind of drive from Norfolk to Suffolk through the Waveney Valley, which is where I grew up. And then if you haven't watched the origin story, go watch that, because it explains a lot about this channel and about me. You drive through from Norfolk into Suffolk and into Cambridgeshire, you'll see these big, huge churches, often on, you know, that you can see from miles away. Massive churches, some as big as cathedrals in other parts of the UK. And those big churches were built off the back of the wealth that was generated by wool trading, and how important wool was at that point in history when those churches were being made. And now wool is not as prized as it once was. And yet wool is pretty sustainable as a material. It's not the most sustainable. Linen, of course, is one of the most sustainable clothing materials that you can get. It uses far less resources than, say, cotton. You can grow it in a different way that uses less water and less land. So it's actually better to have a linen. But again, linen is now considered much more of an upper middle class thing and a prized thing than it used to be. Linen used to be much more readily available, I believe. And these days it's become kind of a luxury item. Continuing that sustainability trend, the other thing I want to bring up is a video that I watched recently on Climate Town about best before dates, and how these date codes that are stamped on food are destroying perfectly good food, and people are throwing it away, sometimes because it's state mandated, sometimes because it's federally mandated, when the food is fine. But it's being thrown away because of fear of bad things happening if someone was to get food poisoning, for example. And, you know, shops are throwing away inordinate amounts of perfectly good food. And sometimes they're prohibited from giving them away to projects that could make use of that food. And it really makes me think how wasteful we are. And that's non-sustainable, right? That's a non-sustainable food thing. When I think about the food I grow here, I grow the food in my garden. I cut it, I harvest it, take it inside, I cook it, and I eat it. It's very often less than an hour between me harvesting it and me eating it. That is much more sustainable in a lot of ways than shipping food to the store, paying someone to put that food on a shelf, and then paying that same person to go back and look through the shelving units to make sure that, you know, all the food is still fresh when it isn't. So go and look at those as well, in those videos as well, in answering to the question of how do you assess something's sustainability. I would love to know. I'm sorry it's been a bit rambly today, but it's been something that I've been trying to get my head around for a while now. And as always, I would love to know your input. And on that note, we are done with today's video. If you have comments, you can drop us a polite note in the comment section below. You can reach out to us on Discord, you can reach out to us on Mastodon, or you can reach out to us in the Patreon page, or on the Patreon page if you are a Patreon member. If you want more, subscribe, hit the bell, and follow the links below to regularly support us with a YouTube membership or a Patreon subscription. You'll also find links to our Ko-fi, Bitcoin, and swag store, as well as that aforementioned Mastodon server, and I will try and remember to throw a link into PeerTube as well. Scrolling on my right is the list of amazing charged up supporters, and shout outs go out to our V2G Patreon supporters. They are Andrew Martin, Alan Tupper, Bennett Elder, Brophy Wolf, Chris Maxwell, Cyprian Laplace, Dan Blair, Gordon C, Hey Esker, John Tramal, Carl Fox, Mark Eggleton, Peter Dillinger, Regine Fellows, Sean Tucker, Stefan Fremgen, Stephen Williams, Tesla in the Gong, Paul Bricknell, Tony Moss, Carl Hodgson, Chris Centaur, Denny Hyde, Lance Schlall, Linda Irish, Mike Weeder, and Paul Nelson. And finally, big thanks to our off-grid supporters, Paul Conway, Kevin Burrowbridge, Stephen O'Donoghue, Jim Burness, Robert Flannery, I got distracted by a dog, Aaron Hahn, Ellery Hensley, Rory Litwin, JP Fagerback, Dave Kitchen, Andrew Glenn, Anonymous Freak, Chris and Michael Johnson, CPU Freak 101, Eric Knack, Joe Bresney, John Henderson, Laura Reynolds, Marcel Ward, Matthew Drobnak, Nigel S, Reggie Watts, Will Graylin, and of course Ian. Never had to throw a ball and juggle the credits before. Sorry if I did them badly and offended you. Anyway, don't forget that we produce content every Monday, Wednesday, Friday and Saturday on the main channel, and then on a Sunday here for the rambly chicken and garden update, and sometimes, like today, the rambly Sunday musing. Anyway, I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. I hope you stay cool, and I will see you next week. Keep evolving.